In this episode, we're going to explore on what is mean stack, what is the architecture of mean stack, what are the key technologies that are present in mean stack, and also how to run mean stack on development environment, and also how to build our mean stack for production, and how to dockerize our mean stack, integration testing, unit testing, a lot more. We're going to explore a lot more on this. So, so the main stack mainly comprises of four key technologies: MongoDB, which is your document database; Express.js, which is your web framework for Node.js; Angular UI framework; and Node.js JavaScript runtime for the backend. And Express and Node make up the middle tier, and Angular will take care of all the front end, and MongoDB is our database. So with these four key technologies, we can easily build three-tier architecture. So front end, back end, and database. So front end is Angular, and back end is our Node.js and Express.js, and the database is our MongoDB. So we now we understand what are all the technologies that we need to build Menstack. Let's see what it takes to build um, to develop the Menstack on our local machine. So first we need to install MongoDB, and when we run our MongoDB on our local machine, it actually uses port 27017. And also we need to install Node.js, which we have seen in our first episode. So you have to build your API and run this API on any port. Let's say port 5000, and then you need to build your Angular application on port 4200. And now all these are running on different ports. MongoDB is running on 27017, Node.js API is running on port 5000, and Angular application is running on 4200. So, so while running all these applications on different ports, there should be a mechanism in which all these has to be communicated with each other. So, and we're going to see different techniques how this communication happens between all these, and we are going to explore in further episodes, and we're going to implement all those. And for now, all you need to know is MongoDB, Node.js, Angular UI, all are running on different ports, and there is a communication among these. Now we know all these three things are running on different ports on our local host machine. So, so when it comes to development environment, we need to build our backend and our front end separately, and we should be running these separately as well, because you need to make changes to both backend and front end at the same time, because you are still in development phase. So that means, so first we will build Node.js API on port 5000, and this Node.js API will actually talks to MongoDB and fetch the data, or save data, or change some data in the MongoDB document database, and serve all the API calls through port 5000. So now we are done with Node.js API, and it is serving all the requests on port 5000. Now we are done with the Node.js API, and let's look at the Angular code. So basically, when you start the application, when you actually create the project with Angular CLI, so Angular CLI start and build the application on port 4200. So your Angular UI is running on port 4200. Your Node.js API is running on 5000. So whenever web sends the request to the Angular code, which is running on 4200, all the static pages, all your UI interfaces will be served from Angular. And whenever Angular code wants to fetch some data from API, at the time the call will be made to the Node.js API. So since Node.js API and Angular UI are not together on your local machine, they are running on different ports, you should have a mechanism called proxying. So Angular CLI we have an option in Angular CLI where you can define all these options in proxy config.json. So when you define, whenever there is a, for example, you have a API slash API, whenever you see slash API in the call, all those requests will be forwarded to the Node.js API, which is running on 5000. So you can configure all this in proxy config.json, and we are going to implement all this in the future episodes. But all you need to know right now is you have a Node.js API running on 5000, and you have an Angular UI running on 4200. Whenever you hit you hit the application from your browser, the requests will be sent to Angular, and Angular will take care of all the data. For example, Angular will take care of serving static pages to the web, and also if it needs any data, it is going to fetch that data from Node.js API through proxying. So all that implementation we can see in the coming episodes. Now we have seen how development environment works when it comes to the stack. So sometimes you might not have all this set up on your local machine. Still, you want to run all these services together at the same time so that you can develop your full stack application on your local machine. So at the time, Docker Compose is really useful when we do not have the development environment set up on our local machine. So it is very useful to run all parts of the application to test, or we want to run all parts of application with one command. So with Docker Compose, you can kill all the services, or you can restart all the services with single command. When it comes to Docker Compose, everything is defined in Docker Compose YAML file. So everything is a service. So that means your database, Node.js API, and your front-end application, everything is a service, and all these services will be running on different ports. And you can we can define all these information in Docker Compose YAML file. So let's look at that Docker Compose YAML file a little bit closely. So here the front-end app runs on port 3000, and also we can mention what are the networks it runs on, and also we can mention what are the dependencies. Here front-end UI depends on the API. So that's why at line number 16 there is a dependency. And let's look at Node.js API. So here we are looking at, this is running on port 3080, and also there is a volume, and also this also depends on DB. You can notice that at line number 33. Let's look at the database. So here the database is running on 27017, and also we are mentioning the volumes. And so here we are not building an image. If you notice line number 36, there is a image Mongo. So we are directly pulling the Mongo image from Docker Hub, and running this Mongo instance on port 27017. So you don't have to know all this right now, because there is a complete dedicated episode for this. So all you need to know is when it comes to Docker Compose, everything is defined in Docker Compose YAML file, and when you build and run this file, all these services will be running on your local machine as one unit on different ports, and you can still edit and save. As you save, all those changes will be reflected on your browser. So we know how to run our stack in both on Docker Compose and on actual local machines. So on development environment, we need to run our Node.js API and our front end on different ports. But when it comes to building and running in production, you cannot run on different ports. So that means you have to run on a single port, and you have to build the whole thing as a package, and this whole package should be running on one port. So for that, so we have to make some changes. So the first change is you have to build your whole front end UI, and and you have to take those assets, and you need to put those assets in the public folder of Node.js API. So, and when your Node.js API running on port 5000, when the browser hits port 5000, your Node.js API serve the index.html, which is the single page application of your front end UI, and that from that when you load that index.html, which is a single page, all your front end JavaScript will kick in, and it will display all the UI there. And whenever you make an API call from the UI from the browser, and your Node.js will handle all those requests. So that is how you build and package your stack in production. So you don't have to worry about right now. So there is a completely dedicated episode for this, and we will see step by step how we build and how we package this whole thing. So nowadays it's very common to Dockerize our application and deploy this Docker image in one of the container orchestration platforms such as Kubernetes and others. So when you build a Docker image, we need to, I mean, it's a best practice to follow multi-stage builds. What is multi-stage builds? So you, I mean, you need to build multiple stages, and you take assets from each stage and put it put those assets in a final stage, so that you can reduce the unnecessary code in the image. And I mean, you can eliminate a lot of libraries and dependencies in the Docker image, in the final Docker image. So for example, if you look at this, in the first stage we are naming this as UI build. So we are building the UI. In the stage 2 we are building the API, and we are naming this as API build. In stage 3, what we are doing here is we are copying from the UI and we are copying from the API. We are putting only the output, the static assets, and the bundle file from the API, and the static assets from the UI, and we are only using those. We are not using any dependencies. We are not using any code which is not related in the final output. So in the stage 3, uh, we are using only those, and with those we are running the app with the last command. So this will actually reduce lot of I mean lot of dependencies. So that means it reduces the image size. When the image size is small, it is very easy to create the image, or it is very easy to create a container out of it. And there are so many advantages we will get to know later. But with multi-stage builds, you can reduce surface attacks, and you can reduce image size. That means faster startup when you deploy this image in the container. So finally, when you create a container out of this image, and this container runs on port 3000, and you can access your whole full stack web application on the browser on port 3000. Okay, we have seen main stuff so far: development environment setup, Dockerization, and Docker Compose, and what are all the technologies that is covered in this stack. So we have covered all those, but there is a lot more when it comes to developing a full stack web application. So there is our MongoDB, and there is our configuration of MongoDB in our API, externalize environment variables, building your UI interfaces, and running all this setup on Docker Compose, unit testing your API, unit testing UI, integration tests, and how you build your stack for production. So there is a lot more, and don't worry, we're going to cover each and every point here as a separate episode in detail. So stay tuned. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.